There was a black SUV parked outside my cabin for over an hour, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. That was when I realized this wasn't just about land anymore. It was war. My name's Daniel Massa. I'm 39, a carpenter, and up until a few months ago, I thought the worst thing I had to survive was my divorce and a failed construction business. I'd moved back to my late father's cabin by Mapleview Lake hoping to rebuild life, career, maybe even peace. It wasn't much, a beat-up tin roof thing with creaky floors and the smell of cedar soaked into its bones. But it sat on 2 acres of pristine lakefront property that had been in my family since the 60s. It was the last thing I had that felt like home. Then she showed up. I was out near the shed, cutting some seasoned oak for a commission table, when I heard heels clicking across my gravel drive. I turned and saw a woman who looked like she'd just stepped out of a courtroom and into the wrong universe. White blazer, perfect hair, lipstick that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "Excuse me," she said with the kind of tone that expects doors to open. "You're destroying protected ecological property that belongs to me." I blinked, still holding the chainsaw. She went on about HOA regulations, conservation zones, and how my illegal timber harvesting was a threat to the environment. I explained calmly, I might add that the trees were deadfall from last winter, that this land had been in my family for decades, and that there was no HOA for 10 miles. She called the cops anyway. I'll never forget the way she said it into the phone, like she was reporting a hostage situation. "Yes, there's a man here with heavy machinery, being hostile. I'm afraid for my safety." 3 patrol cars showed up. I thought it was a joke until Officer Kim stepped out and started asking questions. That's when the woman Celeste Harwood, she introduced herself, pulled out a fancy leather folder and said she was the rightful heir to the land. Claimed her great-aunt had left it to her in a will. What she didn't know. I had a letter from my father buried in that cabin, hidden for decades, that would unravel her entire claim like a loose thread. I didn't find it until that night. I was sitting in Dad's old recliner, the same one he always fell asleep in, feeling like the floor beneath me wasn't real anymore. The cabin didn't feel like mine. It felt borrowed. Then I found the drawer. And in it, the letter. "If anyone ever disputes the cabin," it read, "open this immediately." It was from my father, written in shaky pen. Inside, he laid out everything. Celeste's so-called great-aunt Evelyn Peterson died in 1999, in a downtown apartment. No property, no children, no will. Dad had even included her death certificate, cemetery plot, and a business card for a county clerk who could verify it all. The next day, I met with Dorothy, the clerk. She remembered Evelyn clearly. Sweet lady, worked as a seamstress. Never owned a thing up by the lake. That should have been the end of it. But when I got back to my cabin, Celeste had erected a billboard-sized sign at the entrance reading, "How would nature preserve private property?" Security cameras pointed at my windows. And her Mercedes was back in my driveway. She was inside the cabin. With her was a man in a 3-piece suit who introduced himself as Miles Langston, attorney for Celeste Harwood. Said they were there to document the condition of the estate. Then he slid a vacate notice across the table like it was a dinner menu. I showed them the proof, Evelyn's death certificate, the deed, everything. They didn't blink. "Oh, no," Langston said. "My client's inheritance comes from Evelyn Peterson Lange, maiden name Peterson. Died in 2019. Total curveball." They claimed it was just a different woman with the same name. A legal technicality. I asked for the will. They refused. Attorney-client privilege, they said. That's when Celeste cracked. "You don't know what it's like to sleep in a car at 12 years old," she snapped. "I earned this." So now I was the villain, apparently. Just another man standing in the way of a woman trying to reclaim her dignity. I left that cabin and called the one guy I knew would see through the BS, Eli Ramirez, a former coworker turned private investigator. When I told him the story, he didn't even hesitate. "She's done this before," he said. "Trust me." And she had. Real name: Celeste Hanley. Convicted of real estate fraud in Seattle in 2019. She'd created fake wills, pretended to be a relative of the deceased, and claimed their property. She was supposed to be on probation in Washington, then vanished 18 months ago. As for Langston, bar sanctions in New York. Known for shady real estate cases and defending fraudulent heirs. So this wasn't just a one-off. It was a business model. We kept digging. Eli tracked down the real Evelyn Langlish, passed away in Florida, 2019. No kids, never owned land outside of the state, and had willed her estate to the Alzheimer's Foundation. We even got a copy of the will from her retirement community. Still, Celeste kept pushing forward, even planning to speak at a city council meeting to pitch her eco-conservation plan for the lakefront. That was our shot. I signed up for public comment. Showed the real Evelyn's death certificate. The original land deeds from 1961. Then, a criminal record. The council room went silent. When I showed the will from the woman Celeste claimed to inherit from, proving she gave everything to charity, Celeste lost it. "This is lies. You don't get to win just because you had a daddy and I didn't." She screamed. She sobbed. She confessed more than she realized. And every second of it was live-streamed. What she didn't know was that Eli had sent the link to neighborhood forums, housing groups, even former victims. Within 24 hours, the video had gone viral. 2 days later, Celeste was arrested by federal marshals at a luxury resort. Langston tried to flee to the Cayman Islands. Didn't make it past TSA. Turns out they were part of a multi-state fraud ring. Elderly targets. Forged wills. Millions in stolen property. Now here's where the story gets really complicated. Remember that development Celeste started Harwood Heights. 12 luxury homes built on the hill behind the lake. Turns out that land was mine too. An old environmental easement from 1987 awarded my father an extra 12 acres after he reported illegal dumping. We'd never known. Celeste had built an entire neighborhood on stolen land worth millions. The court said I could evict the homeowners and reclaim it. I didn't. I turned it into a community land trust. Let the family stay with long-term leases at below market rates. I used the income to start a legal defense fund for fraud victims. They renamed it Mercer Commons and asked me to lead the HOA. I said yes. 8 months later, Celeste was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Langston was disbarred. 47 victims across 8 states got justice. But me, I got something more. I got my home back. My dignity. And a community I never expected. Now I sit on this porch, Dad's old spot, drinking coffee while kids from the neighborhood come by for woodworking lessons on Saturdays. The same sound of the lake, the same cedar smell. But everything's different. You tell me, was I right to forgive those homeowners? Or should I have taken it all back? Because sometimes justice isn't about punishment. Sometimes it's about proving that the truth doesn't just survive. It wins.